The first half of the 19th century saw a population explosion in European cities. The rural poor and dispossessed flooded urban centers looking for work. Most of them settled in overcrowded slums rife with disease, crime, and vampirism. All across Europe, vampires found good hunting and ample hiding places in medieval-era neighborhoods with their tumble-down dwellings, narrow streets, and abundant alleyways. Slums in every major European city had a concentration of vampires. The East End of London, Lisbon's Alfama, Warsaw's Old Town. In Paris, so many vampires haunted the neighborhood north of the Louvre that it became known as the Vampire Quarter. European leaders instituted a variety of measures to try and stem the rising tide of vampires, including hiring more vampire fighters and imposing strict curfews. But the number of attacks continued to climb. In 1850, Baron Georges Haussman, Paris's top city planner, offered a radical suggestion. Instead of trying to kill the vampires, why not eliminate their habitat? Haussman envisioned a radical reconstruction of Paris with broad boulevards, spacious squares, and a modern sewer system, as it was still common belief that poor sanitation contributed to vampirism. Haussmann's plan won approval from French Emperor and Napoleon grandson Louis Napoleon, and in 1853 work crews began tearing down the Vampire Quarter, building by building. As crowds of onlookers watched, vampires scurried from collapsing buildings, shrieking and shielding their eyes from the sun, only to be methodically destroyed by special legions of the French army. More than 50 vampires were flushed from the crypt of one single church. While some French people, like writer Émile Zola, protested the widespread destruction of architectural treasures and the lack of interim housing for the homeless, the project initially appeared to slow the rate of vampire attacks. Within 20 years, Haussman had transformed the old rabbit warrens of the Vampire Quarter into posh neighborhoods with grand boulevards radiating from large squares like the Place de l'Opéra. Haussman was celebrated as a genius, and European cities raced to follow his lead. From Lisbon to Prague, broad boulevards and wide squares became the new standards of city design. However, the canonization of Haussman proved to be premature. After dropping for a short time, vampire attacks in Paris rose to their highest levels ever. To make matters worse, the attacks were no longer confined to Paris's slums. Vampires attacked the well-heeled of the Tuileries. They preyed on students across the river in the Latin Quarter. The great irony of Haussman's work was that while he had driven vampires from their old haunts in building Paris's extensive sewer system, he had provided them with the perfect place to hide. For the next 50 years, these vampires, known in Paris as Haussman's children, made their home in the sewers, emerging at night for hunting. For a short time, the French stationed troops there, but they had to pull the plug on the operation due to high rates of desertion. During World War II, French resistance fighters hiding from the Nazis in the sewers encountered vampires in 19th century dress. The development of the vampire vaccine, along with more sophisticated vampire fighting technology, eradicated vampires in Europe by the mid-1960s. However, in 1971, a rash of vampire attacks along the River Seine paralyzed Paris. French authorities, working with the assistance of the FVZA, tracked a lone vampire into the sewers. The vampire was cornered near the Place de Vosges, and there, perhaps the last of Haussmann's children was destroyed. imposing a curfew, and imposing a curfew, imposing, imposing.